sign.
Oh, the universal sign.
There it is.
Okay, you can start, because he'll be ready now.
I would like to say good evening. Got a call to order.
There you go.
The joint meeting of the Board of Public Works Commissioners and the Committee on Infrastructure. This meeting is being held on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, at, we'll call it 5 PM, at the DPW Administrative Office Building. And can the clerk please take the roll call?
Sure, if you would like me to do that.
Yeah, you.
Sure, happy to do it, Mr. Chairman. First, I'm gonna call for the chair, Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Next, I'm gonna ask for Alderwoman Clee, who I believe is not here at this moment, but I do believe she's planning to attend. Alderman Dow.
Present.
Alderman Sullivan is not present. Alderman Thibodeau, I don't believe is present. Commissioner Shea.
No.
I don't believe Commissioner Shea is here. Commissioner Lemon.
Here.
Commissioner Gregg.
Here.
And Commissioner Espedia.
Here.
1, 2, 3,
You forgot the mayor.
4. And then Mayor Donches.
Here.
And then Mayor Donches, we have quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And then joining us is myself, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. Then we also have Joe Sullivan, the project owner's project manager for the DPW garage project.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Was kind of hoping Alderman Sullivan would be here to join the long-lost Sullivan clan. you know. Okay. I don't have any real introductory remarks, other than the fact that we did keep some of the things flowing as far as some of the bills and what's coming up later in the agenda. As I said before, it comes back to the full board to be verified, you know, so we'll be doing that very shortly. And that's enough said. Now, public comment. Anybody from the public would like to comment? Seeing nobody, I'll move to the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 5th, 2025 meeting.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. General progress update. I'm going to recognize Administrative Service Director. Oh, and I would like to recognize Alderman Clay. Welcome. Good to see you.
And has joined us at 5:03 PM.
And I'm going to, at this time, recognize Administrative Service Director, Mr. Tim Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. This evening, what we're hoping to do is provide everyone with a general project status update. This will be an opportunity for you to see the design as it's progressed and provide comments to us. And then we're also going to share a little bit about how we foresee the financials of this project coming together. At a very high level, I should remind everyone that this is all in draft form and subject to change, but nonetheless, this is a snapshot as to where we are right now. I have some handouts that I will go over at the end of our OPM's presentation that kind of goes into a little bit more detail. And then at the further along in the agenda, you'll note that we do have a couple invoices and proposals to approve. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to hand it off to Joe Sullivan so he can go over his PowerPoint presentation for you.
All set. Thanks, Tim. For the record, I'm Joe Sullivan. I'm from Left Field. I'm the owner's project manager for the city related to the Division of Public Works new building. As I discussed at the previous meeting, I gave an update to conceptual design that we're currently at. Since that point, we've been moving diligently and making sure that we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's through each facet of the process to design and process that we needed for any testing that needs to be done and any engineering as we move forward. With that being said, our tasks that we've completed, we meet weekly in person at the site, reviewing and refining the design and program needs. And I can't emphasize that enough, because the department and their staff have been instrumental about making sure that, you know, we're designing this building for not only the city's needs today, but for the next 50 years. GSI has been on site and performed the test pits and borings. We received those records, and those were dispersed today. It's showing the indication of gradation and soil conditions, water levels within that site, and it gives a general dynamics of what the foundation and footings will be for the building for the engineer of record. Equipment lists have been started, and layout of equipment has begun on the conceptual drawings, just to make sure that we have a place, the power needs for everything, and the conceptual drawing works for the city and their departments. Coordination with the fire department has taken place. Lisa's been instrumental on working with the fire department for the relocation of that training facility. That space is needed for the future placement of several of the components related to the design. Engineers, all of the engineers have had input. They're not generally in attendance every week. It's depending on what we're talking about in the next sequence of scope that we're looking to do. And the preliminary cost estimate has taken place in both Luffield and Harvey, has reconciled to the point where, you know, I can't emphasize an estimate. It's at today's markets, it's today's best guess of what we think the project costs are going to be, including midpoint of construction and escalation associated with that. We've been working very closely, identifying what those costs are, what some of the possible value engineering, and that term is used loosely in the field. Value engineering is looking at efficiencies within the building. We're looking at program consistencies to try to make any square footage cuts that we can, and making sure that we meet the program needs as we move forward. Project design. We've actually, you can see the admin building is actually towards the bottom of the overall structure that you'll see in red. We've identified the locality of where the salt shed and the brine pad will be. We've identified overhead vehicle storage, covered vehicle storage, parking spaces outside. We've identified where the locker rooms and the way it's going to flow from the admin building into those locker rooms, then into the vehicle storage. The proposed one-story garage is about 126,550 square feet, of which 90,000 square feet is the vehicle storage. One of our cost saving measures that we're looking at right now is looking at the vehicle storage as a pre-engineered structure. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what we're trying to do to curb some of the costs associated with it. We've identified the vehicle maintenance shops, as well as the admin spaces associated with storage and distribution of inventory. We've identified on-site a drive-through vehicle wash bay. Although we're not including it in the project cost currently, we are costing that out to see what the cost differential would be versus just having a single wash bay that just services the department's needs. The drive-through would service the city's needs as we move forward. Any questions on this? I'm going through the guide. Sorry.
Yeah, I do have one. I look on your map, you have the salt shed, and then immediately looking to the right, I see appropriate wetlands. You gonna put a berm in or anything else?
So
like that?
we did look at the setbacks. We're exceeding those setbacks from those wetland
Okay.
areas. And just to reconfirm, all of the watershed and desirable or undesirable materials that may go into the underground retention is all going to be held within that site. It will not go to the wetlands. It'll go through either any type of filter system. We'll have oil water separators, and most of that will be handled within the engineering of the next phase into schematic.
On the wash, a drive-through would be able to handle fire trucks, police cars?
Everything we can, I can tell you, the city has directed the engineers to make sure that it encompasses all city vehicles.
Because, you know, not doing that and doing a smaller one wouldn't make sense from a life cycle cost standpoint, because we're trying to save the life of these vehicles, and getting the salt off them is key. And we also have park rec vehicles that are stored somewhere else, at least now anyway. And we also have school department vehicles.
Right.
So it wouldn't make sense not to do the drive-through.
We are looking at, we are including all of those. I've done a study, and I've done a number of Department of Public Works facilities, and it showed you extend the longevity of vehicles almost 10 years by having a wash and covered storage. And if you do that and you calculate what the cost implications would be to replace that equipment, it's a payback that you can't imagine, so.
But I'm going to insert myself right here to make it clear that
Is not part of
that
it.
is not part of the current project. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that later on. And it's an open question, because when we did price out solely the cost to just service the DPW from a car wash perspective, the number came in so high, I think it was a reasonable question to ask for just a few more additional dollars. Should we look at trying to provide that service for the entire city? And we can talk about that a little bit later on.
But I think you need to do a business case analysis, because if you're getting 10 additional years on vehicles, and based on what the surf issues are, you know, you've got to, this isn't just DPW issue, it's across all divisions. And it makes sense, even if we did that first, that's a key element of saving the city money in the long run, even though it may be more costly initially. You've got to, you know, be, you don't want to be foolish on spending the money and not do what we can to save the cost of these vehicles, because they're getting more expensive, they're getting longer to build. There's a lot of surf issues that could be resolved.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was just stated. I just want to make sure that it's clear that I'm framing this conversation based off of the work we did through the ad hoc process. We developed our capital planning. And so if so desired to do something a little different, happy to do that. But I think that's a conversation we would welcome. And it's a conversation I hope we have at the conclusion of this presentation.
And to your point, and to Tim's, he clarified that for a number of different reasons. It was one that we wanted to make sure that we had space identified on the site for that facility. And both Lisa and Tim have expressed the importance of trying to at least, you know, develop not only the locality of where it would go, but the costs associated with it, so they could do planning in the future. So we're going to have those discussions as we move forward. All right? Next one is just a layout of the vehicle storage. Oh, you had a question? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Lemon.
On your map, where you have the salt shed, then there's this little curved X, and all it says is $4.5 million. And I would like to know what that little curved X is.
Yeah, again, Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes, you may.
so that, and again, I'll go over this visual aid at the end of the presentation, but to answer the question at hand, I wanted to ensure I captured what the site work costs are going to be
Oh, okay.
for the various, this is approximately 14 acres. And so the $4.5 million is essentially for us to be able to create the pad site necessary to be able to construct the various buildings.
So it is a treasure map, just not for us.
It will be eventually.
Yeah.
Great question, thank you. The next one is a picture of the actual layout within the maintenance facility and the vehicle storage, along with the locker rooms. You can see the vehicle storage. We're anticipating actually being able to store a little over 130 vehicles, 136, is that the actual number?
Around
And you can see by the layout and design, it has the identification of where vehicles would be, but it also inhibits some flexibility in that space, so that depending on the seasons, we'll be able to, you know, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, give the Department of Public Works flexibility to utilize that space as needed. The vehicle maintenance, you can see the different bays that they have done on that. It identifies each of those specific spaces that we discussed with each of the personnel, and the storage and mechanism within each of those spaces to ensure that we're providing the electrical and lifts and whatever other material that they're going to need for the next, 40 to 50 years. There is admin space to the vehicle maintenance, because we obviously, needed bathrooms and break rooms within that area and office space associated with it. So we've identified that. And the traffic flow, we've had an engineer basically look at the traffic flow, the swings, the radiuses of the vehicles, making sure that everything's going to work within that site. As I indicated earlier, there's about a 5-foot drop from the admin building currently to the back of that site. And we took all that into consideration as we performed the layout and how the building shifted just a little bit just to accommodate all of those needs. Any questions with this slide? Next one is some elevations. With this size of a building, the massing is always a concern. When you see, a 90,000 square foot vehicle storage, you just don't want it to be a big box rectangle. So the engineers are taking every aspect of any break within the building or contour to make sure that we break up the overall massing and create some architectural features on there that not only, we're not trying to marry the administration building, but we are trying to complement it as we move forward. In each of these elevations that they presented are the conceptual drawings. They will go through some renditions that will pass through the Department of Public Works, Lisa and Tim, just to make sure that it's following their vision as we move forward. Throughout the past weeks, the Department of Public Works team has, input on all the flexibility and efficiencies with the building layout. They literally, every meeting, they get the drawings a little in advance, they come prepared, and they're actually providing a lot of detail and information about their operations and what that structure should hold and how it should work in the near future. We're minimizing the overall project costs with Harvey, identifying any cost efficiencies or savings that we can do, whether it's materials, but we're also looking for longevity. So we're not looking to make cuts in materials that will cut the longevity of the building. We're looking to make sure that we build efficiencies with the construction methods of that and minimize change orders as we move forward. Next steps are the geotechs borings and test pits took place on April 10th, as I discussed. HKT's plans on moving to schematic design is our next step. They're currently correlating the conceptual and making some modest modifications to the drawings based on some of the input from the department. We continue to monitor schedule. Schedule drives everything. If schedule gets pushed out, we know costs go up. So we're really holding the team, and that includes left field, accountable as we move forward through each of these steps. Coordination of permitting, as we have these drawings evolve, we're going to start to have some courtesy meetings with the department, the permitting departments, just to make sure that we get their input early. So in the event that we have to make any proposed changes, we're identifying them, and it's not going to be a redesign as we move forward. The Harvey's is basically looking at the constructability. They're starting to, as HKT, the architect, provides details, Harvey's looking at those details to make sure they make sense, because they've done it a number of times, and make sure that they're giving their input back to the architect and engineers to assure that we get the most cost-effective design. And our project team continues to coordinate on-site to meet all of the program needs as we move forward. And that's the end of my presentation. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Tim.
Before I continue, Mr. Chairman, happy to take any questions at this time on the current design efforts before we pivot to talk a little bit
Let me
more
put
about the
family next to
financials for the project.
You put family next to it.
Alderman Clay.
I apologize. It really has very little to do with the question that was just asked, but I'm just going to ask that in the future, if this meeting, I know it says that it starts immediately, per the agenda, immediately after the Public Works, but in all fairness to the aldermen, myself and the other 2 aldermen that joined us, we saw 5:15 and showed up for a 5:15 meeting, so we're kind of at a disadvantage. So I think in the future, I would have to be here early enough to be here for the end of a Public Works meeting. So I would just appreciate a courtesy of it not starting before 5:15, just in the future. But I have no questions. Thank you.
Duly noted.
All right, if there's no questions at hand, I just think it would be a good time to pivot and talk a little bit about how the total project budget is shaping up. And just to remind everyone, this is all in draft form. These issues are relatively fluid, and it's a snapshot in time as to where we're at. And so, first and foremost, let's talk about how we see the total project budget coming together. And you'll have a handout in front of you that's a little bit larger, and it talks about some of the major categories of how our total project spends. And so you'll note that we have some pre-design services at around $300,000. We have architectural and engineering design fees at $3.6 million, and some additional design services at about just under $1.4 million. And then you'll note that we have hard construction costs at just under $43 million. I'll note, when we first started costing this project, it was looking like the project at hand was gonna be about $49 million. And over the last month or so, through the hard work of the DPW team, through our OPM, through Harvey, and through our architect, we've arrived at a hard construction cost estimate at $43 million, which puts us on track still for our total project cost as we originally estimated the project when we were conceptualizing taking this project on. I will take a moment now to talk a little bit about this $43 million. And if you look at another handout I've given you, that is called the Harvey handout here, it talks about how we get to the $42,895,000 figure. And what we needed to do was accept some reductions in program to get to that 43 million. So that 43 million, and again, I'm just rounding numbers here, it's just under 43 million. It is because we accepted a cost savings to remove the detached covered parking structures of just under 2 million. It's my understanding that this scope of work will be taken on by the DPW later on. It's a good project to break off and have them do later on. And so that's why it's part of our, as you say, value engineering efforts. Another item that we accepted is the bin storage. So the bin storage and the brine pad, again, reduced from this project, but something that we could do very easily later on. And then, as you'll note, you'll see just under $2 million of savings because the DPW is gonna take on some site work. So earlier I noted that 4.5 million, that actually originally back a month or so ago was reading more like 6.5 million. But because the DPW can take on some of the work and they plan on doing that, Harvey has essentially, if you will, recognized that, provided a credit, if you will, against that 6.5 million to 4.5. Then finally, you'll see a couple other items. One is us moving from a conventional framed building to a pre-engineered building, and you're seeing that drives a savings of about 2.3 million. And then lastly, when we originally were conceptualized the design of the project, we had it at an 18-foot door clearance for the garage doors. We're reducing that down to 16, and that brings about a $200,000 savings. And as you can see, if we reduce the scope, that brings us down to about $43 million. And I will just note that $43 million does not include an auto wash at this time. Now, when we priced out the auto wash, it came in at just over 1.5 million, something like 1.8 million. And the conversation at hand is if we're gonna spend approximately $1.5 to almost $2 million, and it's only going to be for specifically the DPW, should we look at maybe having a little bit larger, robust of a conversation, try to achieve some efficiencies, spend maybe another $500,000 or thereabouts, something more like 2.5 million, and try to provide this service for the entire city. If we were to do that, that is above and beyond the 43 million that's contemplated in this project's budget, but a conversation that is warranted and should be had. So to help you further distill and understand that 43 million, I created a visual aid. It's a little bit of a map here that kind of walks you through how you get to that 43 million figure. And it essentially shows you what we say, what you're buying. And what you're gonna be essentially buying is about 7,500 square feet of office admin space, about a 90,000 square foot storage of vehicles, about 135 vehicles, and approximately 30,000 square feet of fleet maintenance space. There's some additional costs in there, such as a salt shed for just about 800,000, and then site work at approximately 4.5 million. And so that is the program that we're contemplating to date, and if we continue along that path and you refer back to the larger page budget, you'll see that we're, carrying some money for testing at about 75,000. We're carrying some money for what we refer to as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, including some money for the microgrid still at this time for about 2.6 million. And then other miscellaneous costs of around 200,000. And then when we add in an owner's contingency, you can see we're arriving at about a $54 million project. Now, you might be saying, $54 million, how do we pay for that? And how are we gonna keep that on track with the work that we did during last summer through our capital spending exercise and our ad hoc initiative? And so you'll see down below sources of funds. And first and foremost is the city bond at $48 million. And that includes what I would refer to as escalation and the inflationary factor that we should anticipate when we release the bond for construction, and it aligns with the work that we did in the ad hoc plan. We've already repurposed about 2.2 million in design from a previous bond authorization. A separate legislative effort would be needed to essentially repurpose or transfer about $800,000 of various DPW project monies that are surplus at this time, or
300,000.
I'm sorry, 300,000 of surplus money from various capital projects that have essentially closed out and is available for repurposing. Similar exercise for the DPW solid waste fund at 500,000, and then a repurposing of a DPW solid waste fund capital bond at $3 million. That all totals the 54 million. And so that is essentially how we're conceiving of this total project cost. This is a first iteration of estimates. I should note that we will do this at least on 2 other occasions as we move forward. But we are working in this direction unless we're told otherwise, and how we are trying to put the puzzle pieces together to make this project work. I'll note that there is a bond authorization that was just filed, and in fact tonight it will have its first reading for a $5 million that would allow us to continue along with the design as outlined with this total project cost. The idea is to get under construction sometime next summer. So we have to be designed throughout this year and issue a construction bond for sometime next spring to be able to stay on task with all the numbers we've outlined right here and now. These numbers, if we don't move forward with construction for this upcoming summer, not this summer, but the following summer, to be clear, we would have to revisit some of these cost estimates, because the cost estimates were all done with an understanding that we're trying to get under construction for, not this summer, but next summer. So I've given you all a lot of information right there. I'll pause, Mr. Chairman, in case there are any questions.
Alderman Dow.
Yeah, for the sake of the alderman that got in here late, did you say that the localized only for DPW wash was included in this price? It is not.
Not included in this price, and it came in at, I'm gonna say about 1.5, 1.8 million off the top of my head.
And the drive-through that would do all of our vehicles in the city?
Where we would have to get that estimated still, and we're working on that. My understanding is it's around 2.5 million.
So it came up while you weren't here, that you get substantially increased time of vehicles we buy through SURF if the entire city's vehicles could go through this drive-through wash. Just hearing the difference in price, even if we break it out and do it separately, is a huge savings in vehicles going forward, especially with the cost of vehicles now in SURF, the time it takes to get them built. I had asked for a business case analysis on the two alternatives, because if we can save a ton of money on vehicles going forward, to me, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to do the drive-through, even if we have to break it out separate from this project, because you're talking vehicles that cost, some of them in excess of $1 million a piece. Now, Joe Sullivan said 10 years. I'm not sure you get another 10 years out of vehicles, but you certainly, on the larger ones, would get enough time to offset the payment for the additional cost of that wash. So I think that's something we seriously need to look at.
Anybody else have questions? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Director Cummings mentioned the first reading tonight of R-25-151, and to be clear, that 5.5 million is not included in the 54 million and change for this.
It is.
It is included. Okay.
All set, Alderman Sullivan?
I am. I just, if you could please just point it out on the budget worksheet that you gave us. Is it just baked into one of these lines, and I'm not?
Yeah, so if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Absolutely.
essentially what you'd see is, instead of that 48 moving forward, you'd reduce that by about 5, and you'd see a future bond authorization of about 43. Down at the bottom under notes.
Yes.
So as of right now, to do this total project, we would need about 48 million in new bond authorization. We have already authorized 2.2 million, so we've already done that. So that's just to kind of note that. But we would need to, if approved, that 5 million would reduce this 48 down to something like 43. So you could anticipate a bond authorization of about 40-ish, 3 million next year, really focused on construction. And that would be one, if you will, legislative effort. Separate from that, you're gonna need 2 or 3 other legislative efforts where we are transferring or repurposing other monies to add up to the total of 54 million.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Thank you. I'm sure the homework has already been done, and far be it for me to squawk at saving money, but I'm curious of the reduced height to save 234K. I'm assuming that's the full head height, not just the door, just to be clear, right? So it's not just to save 2 feet of door, it's full building height. And is it not worth gaining that extra 2 feet? What does that extra headway gain us? And is it worth saving the 234,000 instead of going with the 18-foot building instead of the 16-foot building?
Mr. Chairman, I'd hand it off to our OPM to answer that.
I promise I did not talk to him. I asked the same exact question. So,
What I've come to learn is over the year, is my scope of how much things cost have drastically changed.
Yeah.
So what would have seemed like earth-shattering dollars to me before I started this, 230, I'm like, well, it's kind of chump, and I don't want to say chump change, but it's kind of like chump change if that extra 2 feet of headspace could prove valuable. And I don't know that. I'm assuming that work has been done, and maybe it is
Yep.
not worth that savings, and we want to gain that 2 feet.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get
Absolutely.
Mr. Sullivan to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Cummins. And that's a great question. We, ad nausea, we discussed this point. Lisa was adamant to try to get the height just for equipment needs as we move forward. After a long deliberation of what standardizations are in the height of most bridges and other equipment, 16 feet to get into the building is more than adequate. The building itself, the height restriction within the building is actually another 5 feet of clearance once you're in the building. So the answer is it reduces the overall framework, the structural steel, the masonry that may be around that opening for that reduction of $200,000, but doesn't impact the overall operation of their facility. I hope that answers your question.
Right, so it does not affect the internal operating
Correct.
height of the building?
None whatsoever.
Just the structure around the
That's right,
entry?
the opening.
Gotcha.
And I'll
Okay.
just ask this question, because I'm pretty sure you probably thought about it, but like, we know that vehicles exponentially grow over the years, and we're talking about 50 years here that we're gonna be putting on this
Yep.
building. We know that's part of the street department problem right now, trying to get those trucks in there. We feel confident that losing those 2 feet are gonna be fine in 30 years?
On the height, yes.
Okay,
The width, we've made the doors wider to ensure that they had plenty of clearance to bring their vehicles in and out. That was that was one point that would not be relinquished. They wanted to make sure they had plenty of width to get into the building.
okay.
Is that fair to say, Lisa?
yes.
Okay.
Alderman Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is probably, again, something that I haven't been here for a little while, so I apologize if it's already been discussed over and over again, but I always have anxieties about the cost going up and escalating of tariffs and so on and so forth. And we have these great numbers, and I see that we build in contingencies and so on, but do we feel comfortable with what little knowledge we have? Because we can't have a crystal ball to see into the future, but do we feel that, in a year from now, we're not going to have to put that little bit of savings that it's not a little bit, $6 million is a lot of bit of savings, but that $6 million back in?
Mr.
That's
Chairman,
my
if I may.
question.
Yes, you may.
So that is an excellent question, Alderman Clee, and this is the thing that causes me the most stress at night, as I'm the person who typically is on the spot when it comes to this type of question. I will say at this time, I have confidence in these numbers, so long as we go under construction for next spring, next summer. If we miss that target, add 10 to 12% on these numbers.
Bottom line.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Dow.
Yeah, just so we have it on the table, what's the construction time for this building?
Approximately 16 months.
16 months this whole project's gonna be done?
Yes.
2 months of closeout.
So the bond acquisitions will be over what years? Because normally we don't do bonds until we incur costs. So the bonds look like they would be probably sold in 27, 28, 29?
This is a somewhat fluid answer, Mr. Chairman, if I may. At this time, I'm going to say, depending on when we start and when we sell, I would think it would be 28 and 29. Fiscal years 28 and fiscal years 29. It could be fiscal years 27 and fiscal year 28, depending on how much we spend that first year.
So when we're looking at the ad hoc, we're not looking at putting any of this in FY '26.
No.
And we're going to split the costs across 2 or 3 years at least
Correct.
when we're looking at projects. And again, the savings to vehicles and efficiencies of operation, to me, would be significant savings against the cost of the actual bond.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, you may.
I have not gotten to the point of asking Harvey for a drawdown schedule, and this is what you're asking, Alderman Dowd. I will do that. I am right now at least assuming a 2-year. It could be potentially a 3-year schedule in which we sell the bonds based off of the drawdown.
Okay, I do have just one question to Mr. Sullivan. The garage portion is gonna have a truck lift, correct? Because you can't have pits anymore to get underneath the vehicle. The height is okay to lift the truck up and it's ergonomically correct for the mechanic to do a brake job?
That's a great question, and we have that department in part of our meetings, and they've affirmed that they'll have lifts, and the height requirements within that building will suffice. It's not, the height requirements are not going to change for the maintenance facility, just vehicle storage as you move into it.
Oh, okay.
We are, the heights for the vehicle maintenance will be at 16 feet, but the height within that building, we're looking at a conventional construction or engineered, but we're going to determine to ensure that we have enough clearance for any of that work to occur.
All right, thank you. Alderman Dowd.
Just to be sure that the cost of the lifts and all the equipment that goes into the building is part of this price?
It is.
All right.
And so the good news is the Department of Public Works has been diligently making sure that they've been getting equipment as they needed, and some of that equipment will be moved, that's fairly new, will be moved into the facility for cost savings as well.
Okay. Any further questions? Members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I think we're moving on to general progress update. And that's basically what we just did, Mr. Cummings, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
So
Yep.
now I'm going to look for approval of contracts, proposals, and amendments. Alderman Dowd, could you please make the motion?
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the amendment number 1 to the HKT Architects March 31st, 2025 proposed contract in the amount of $1,267,517.
Discussion on the motion? Commissioner Espedia?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Discussion on the motion?
If I could, Mr. Chairman. just-
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear for the record that this would be essentially Phase 2 of the architect's design work. This is going to bring us through what we refer to as construction documents. I would anticipate another amendment at the end of that phase for construction administration, but that will be maybe 9 or so months from now or thereabouts.
All right, very good. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along. Next, Alderman Dow, do you have a motion, another motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve amendment number 1 to the Left Field LLC February 20, 2025 proposed contract in the amount of $106,000.
And Director Cummings, this is something dragged over from the last meeting, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Can you give us an explanation?
Yes, this is essentially, if you will, Phase 2 of the OPM contract. We had the initial phase, which got us through to right about now. Now we will continue to ask for additional services from the OPM to help us through design. I would anticipating this getting us through the fall. I would think that we would be seeking another amendment sometime mid-fall to continue their work, and then another amendment at the end of design when we are starting construction to get us through the 16 months of construction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
we've got to go into other expenditures for approval. Can you make a
Yes.
motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve an invoice by Left Field LLC dated February 28th, 2025, in the amount of $22,000.
Director Cummings, do you want to give us a brief explanation?
I will. I am here tonight to recommend to you approval of the $22,000 payment to Left Field for services rendered as they've assisted us through the design portion of the DPW garage project.
Very good discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Old business? None. New business, potential new division of Public Works project. I will recognize the Administrative Service Director, Tim Cummings, for explanation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so what I wanted to do is take this opportunity to preview or telegraph, as I understand it, a project that is going to be coming down the pike for the joint body to review and oversee, and that's relative to an administrative office type structure at the wastewater treatment plant. As I understand it, that this is contemplated within the wastewater treatment plant's capital fund, or I should say within their financial plan, and is a capital project that is accommodated within that financial plan. And we want to start working towards getting this wastewater structure, which hasn't been designed yet, to the next step, or if you will, to the next phase. So I'm going to be seeking approval for a proposal for design services to start that conversation with an architect. I believe we're contemplating using HKT, who's our current architect on this project, to help us with that. We are working through the details now, but I wanted to kind of tease this out to make everyone aware, so you weren't surprised by hearing that this body would have a second project to manage and oversee over the coming months. There's a lot of unknowns at this time, so we don't have the answers yet, but we're going to start working towards getting those answers, and I wanted to just quickly brief the body.
Any comments? Alderman Dow.
Yes. So this project is covered under the DPW's
The user
You-
Yeah, the rate,
user
the rate,
the
the rate,
enterprise, under the
fees.
enterprise fund.
So,
Yes.
and it is part of the budget
Yes.
Yes.
that we're going to be approving. So I'm assuming that this would kick off after approval of the FY '26 budget.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Unless you're going to use FY '25 funds, DPW funds to start it.
I don't know as of yet, but I will have that answered before I put anything before you for approval. I'm not exactly sure where we are on that front, but I will get that addressed.
And,
Yes.
may I, Mr. Chairman, so this is
Director
actually,
Paul, yes.
this is actually a storage facility for our equipment at wastewater and also a maintenance facility, just to clarify what this will be used for. We currently have a maintenance facility. It's extremely outdated. Joe toured it and it was surprised at the conditions they're working in. But more importantly, and you'll see this project coming up, we're working on a type A, a Class A biosolid project, which will be where the current maintenance facility is. And then, so that necessitates the move of the maintenance facility. And we also don't have any room to store any of our equipment. We have 2 very expensive Vector trucks, actually 3 right now, that we don't have any storage. And in the wintertime, that's extremely problematic. They're having to store one at streets and then that, you know, requires streets to put some of their equipment outside, which is not an ideal situation. So this is something that we have budgeted for, to Alderman Dowd's point, where we think it's around a $10 million project. So
We're not sure yet.
But we're not sure.
I don't want anyone to hold on to that number.
That's-
Don't hold on to that number.
Hold on, but that's, it's a much smaller project than what we're doing here, that will be through the enterprise fund.
So just for others, Alderman Sullivan and I have seen this presentation at CIC. Tonight, the Alderman will be getting the CIC discussion and the book. I can't remember where the projects fell, but they were approved because they're enterprise fund projects. And I would also assume that when you come in before the Budget Committee for your FY '26 budget, that you're going to talk to that as well.
We certainly can, yes.
Okay, any further questions, comments? Okay, I'd like to, at this time, thank everybody. Oh, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that I'm proposing our next joint meeting to be May 28th. If that works for everyone, I just wanted to telegraph that all for you now, so we can plan accordingly. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that not a
Do we have budget?
budget meeting that night? Are you having it before the budget meeting?
We typically do it before. We typically have these meetings around 5:30.
And I suggest we have it at City Hall, so we're not doing this transit.
Yes, we will do that.
I have May 28 as a Wednesday.
Yes.
So maybe we don't have budget.
Now, it's a holiday week. 26 would be Memorial Day. 27, we'll probably approve the budget.
Probably not. I've heard so many dates from Donna lately, they're all running
Yeah.
out.
And one other thing I got, Director Cummings, would you be so kind as to forward all the material, hard copies that you were given to our administrative assistant,
I will do so.
and so they could be part of the record? And I also like to thank our lovely water carrier, you know what I mean? It was very good. Thank you so much for doing that, you know? And we might as well get this girl back into the swing. Alderman Clee, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Sure. I'd motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a
Yeah,
motion
that'd be
to
great.
adjourn.
16.
Any discussion? Seeing none, there's no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Perfect.
Motion
Thank you.
carries.